time for movie number 7 on my Best Picture winner marathon. Best Picture Marathon theme song. I was very excited to rewatch It Happened One Night, which came out in 1934, directed by Frank Capra. It Happened One Night is considered to be one of the first of what are known as screwball comedies, basically rom-coms that involve mismatched leads, kind of the enemies to lovers sort of trope. In this case, we have the character Ellie, played by the great Claudette Colbert, who is a spoiled rich heiress that jumps off of her father's yacht in order to reunite with her husband in New York, with whom she recently eloped. Along the way, she meets the cynical journalist Peter Warren, played by Clark Gable, one of the biggest stars in Hollywood during the 1930s. Peter decides to help Ellie get back to New York so that he can write a story and get his job back at the newspaper where he was recently fired. Their relationship is contentious, as is normal in a screwball comedy, but of course, as the movie unfolds, they fall in love. It Happened One Night was the first movie to sweep all 5 of the top categories at the Oscars: Best Picture, Best Director, Best Actor, Best Actress, and Best Screenplay. Which is kind of ironic because a lot of the people working on this film were convinced that it was terrible. In the early 1930s, Columbia Pictures was considered a poverty row studio. It wasn't taken very seriously, they made low-budget movies, they weren't very well respected. Clark Gable was under contract to MGM at the time, and major studios like MGM, Warner Brothers, Paramount would loan out their stars to Columbia, usually as punishment for something like questioning a decision or being engaged in some kind of a scandal or something like that. Claudette Colbert had appeared in one of Frank Capra's earlier films and had a miserable time with it. It was a failure of a film, so she was just convinced that this movie was going to be garbage. So many major actresses had already turned it down that Columbia ended up offering to double Colbert's salary to do the picture. It Happened One Night has some delightfully racy moments that really pushed the boundaries of what was allowed under the early censorship rules. The Production Code Administration hadn't started strictly enforcing the production code quite yet. That would begin about 4 months after It Happened One Night debuted, so it got in just under the wire. Reportedly, there were a number of things in this movie that actually served as inspiration for the Warner Brothers Looney Tunes character Bugs Bunny, not the least of which was the way that Clark Gable would make snide remarks while chomping on carrots. It Happened One Night ended up being a huge box office success and actually was almost single-handedly responsible for turning Columbia Pictures into a legitimate, respected studio. That same year, Columbia started producing short films with the Three Stooges, which also proved to be insanely popular for the studio. Frank Capra would go on to direct a number of other significant films, including one more Best Picture winner that we'll get to before the end of the 1930s. I love It Happened One Night. I've seen it many times, and it makes me laugh. It's everything that I want a screwball romantic comedy to be. There have been so many other screwball comedies and romantic comedies that have come out in the years since this that have been clearly influenced by It Happened One Night. I really enjoyed revisiting this wonderful old film. Next up, another Clark Gable picture, Mutiny on the Bounty. See you then.